We're about to dive into one of the deepest mysteries there is. And guess what? It's happening inside your head right now. This is our explainer on Annika Harris's fantastic book, Conscious. This is a journey that's going to challenge the very nature of your awareness and really make you question that feeling of being you, the one you take for granted every single moment. Right off the bat, Harris hits us with this profound question, and it's really the core of our whole exploration. Notice the shift here. It's not just how we're conscious, but why. Why does it feel like something to be you? Why isn't all this super complex processing in our brains just happening, in the dark without any subjective experience at all? That right there is the mystery. And what's so wild is that this giant puzzle isn't somewhere out in the cosmos. It's right behind your eyes. It's the very experience of you hearing my voice right now. It's so constant, so fundamental to our existence that we almost never stop to notice how truly bizarre it all is. This quote from Harris just nails it. Think about it. Consciousness is the screen that your entire life is projected on. We get so lost in the story playing out on the screen that we forget to ask what the screen itself is even made of. We're so busy watching the movie, we never think to question the theater. So where does all this questioning lead? Well, it takes us straight to an idea that challenges our most basic sense of self, free will. We all feel like we're the authors of our thoughts and our actions, right? But what if we're not actually the driver? What if we're just along for the ride? And this isn't just some philosophical game. Neuroscientific studies have actually shown that the brain activity for a decision can be detected seconds before you're consciously aware of making it. Your brain, it seems, has already decided to reach for that cup of coffee long before you have. Just think about what that means for a second. Our entire legal system is built on this idea of conscious intent. Okay, so if you're not making the decision, why does it feel like you are? This is the part that totally blew my mind. Let's meet the interpreter. Think of it like a little press secretary living in your brain's left hemisphere. Its job isn't to make decisions. Nope. Its job is to watch what the rest of the brain does and then, after the fact, create a totally plausible story explaining why you did it. So that feeling of conscious will, it might just be a really convincing story you're telling yourself. There's this thought experiment called the philosophical zombie that pushes this whole idea to its absolute limit. Imagine a perfect copy of you. It walks like you, talks like you, acts just like you. It even seems to laugh at jokes and wince in pain. But on the inside, there's nothing. The lights are on, but nobody's home. There's no inner experience. Here's the unsettling question. How could you ever prove that this isn't you? And this leads us to the next logical step. If our will is an illusion created by this interpreter, then what about the I that's at the center of it all? Who or what is the self that's supposedly having this whole experience? The evidence from split-brain patients is a perfect illustration of this. When the connection between the two halves of the brain is cut, you literally see two separate streams of consciousness. The left hemisphere, our interpreter, will invent reasons for what the right hemisphere, the silent partner, is doing without having any idea what the real cause is. It really suggests you don't have one unified self. You have at least two, and one of them is just way better at talking. So the big takeaway here is that the feeling of being a single, stable self, the same you today that you were yesterday, that could also be an illusion. A very useful one, for sure, but an illusion nonetheless. What we call the self might be less like a solid thing and more like a constantly changing stream of awareness. All right, if you're still with me, we're about to take an even bigger leap. If the self and free will are already on shaky ground, what about the very location of consciousness itself? Where does it begin and where does it end? This is where Harris brings in a truly mind-bending idea. I mean, our everyday intuition seems pretty clear on this, right? I feel conscious. You probably feel conscious. We're pretty sure other people and maybe some animals are conscious too. And we're just as sure that other things like a coffee cup or a rock or a plant are definitely not conscious. There's no what it's like to be a rock. It's just a rock. That seems like a pretty obvious line in the sand. But what if that clear, intuitive line is just another story we tell ourselves? What if our intuition, which evolved to help us find food and avoid predators, is simply the wrong tool for understanding the fundamental nature of reality? This leads us to a theory called panpsychism, and the idea here is that consciousness didn't just suddenly pop into existence when brains got complicated enough. Instead, what if it's a fundamental property of matter itself, just like mass or charge? Now, a rock or an electron wouldn't be thinking, of course, but it might have some incredibly simple, primitive flicker of experience. It's a completely radical shift from how we normally see the universe. Okay, so let's try to bring this all home. We've questioned free will, we've questioned the self, and we've even questioned where consciousness is located. So, what are we supposed to do with all these unsettling ideas? How does this change our perspective on who we actually are? These are the core challenges Harris really leaves us to grapple with. What if that feeling of being in control is just a narrative your brain spins? What if the self is just a bundle of different processes working together? And, maybe most profoundly, what if consciousness isn't some special thing that your brain has, but a fundamental feature of the cosmos that your brain is just tuned into, kind of like a radio picking up a signal? And that brings us to the final, really haunting question of this journey. After we've picked apart our most basic assumptions about who we are, we're left with this. If you are not the stable, unified author of your own actions, then what exactly are you?